So today I'm going to introduce you to the concept of a moral panic. The idea of a moral panic is a concept developed by Stanley Cohen, who was a British sociologist who studied mods and rockers in the 1960s, just as rock music was emerging on the scene. And if you think back to that time, what you've heard about it, the Beatles were considered outrageous by mainstream society and especially like older middle class adults. Stanley Cohen says that this is a moral panic occurs when people are wrapped in irrational fear. And it's especially a fear around a minority group's behaviors that are viewed as dangerously deviant. And so, for example, in the case of rock music, when it was first emerging, these were young kids, they were associated with drugs, and the threat was that they were going to disrupt and, really upset the social order. And especially that they were going to lead young people into wanting to do all of these kinds of things, right? So it's a minority group of some sort that is considered threatening. And by focusing on the minority group, they become a scapegoat, right? This becomes a way to address larger social problems in a simplistic way. And that simplistic way is often a call for more social control. It might be in the form of laws, regulations, other kinds of ways that we bound people's behavior, but the effort is to take care of the problem by preventing or prohibiting these dangerous behaviors. So from the perspective of Stanley Cohen, there are four elements of a moral panic. We're going to specifically focus on drug-related panics. So in our case, the first thing that we're going to be looking for as we talk about moral panics is something called a demon drug. And this is the idea that a drug is talked about as if it is demonic, as if it possesses a person and makes them behave in a way that they normally wouldn't. So when I was a kid, there were outrageous stories of people who got high on PCP and then could go out and they could lift cars on their own, and it was really scary sounding. It really weren't true, but that's the way that people talked about PCP, which was called angel dust at the time. So the idea is that it makes people behave in a way that they normally wouldn't. And that drug is then associated with some group that is undesirable in society. So some marginalized group is said to use this drug more than others. But the data doesn't always support these claims. In fact, in many cases, you will see that it does not. But nevertheless, the stereotype is that this marginalized group is the one who is using this demon drug. And this dangerous or undesirable group, they're often racial and ethnic minorities, maybe working class or poor people, immigrant groups, things like that. Those are recurring things you're going to see in moral panics around drugs in the US. And also, this undesirable group who uses this drug, they're talked about as being threatening often to some group that is vulnerable and valuable often. So it might be they're a threat to children, it might be they're a threat to young women, right? There's some group that becomes the target of this undesirable group in terms of the stereotype. The rallying call for a need to do something is often led by people that Cohen referred to as moral entrepreneurs. These are people with some status that lead the rallying call to say we have to do something about this problem. They might be individuals, they might also be organized groups or some combination of the two, but these are the people that say we have to do something. And in this class, the outcome that we're going to focus on is typically social control policies, so new laws that either regulate drug use or prohibit it as an effort to control the problem. So you're going to see this idea of a moral panic, especially these first couple of weeks and recurring throughout the course, where, a lot of our drug laws are going to come from these kinds of panics. And I want you to be able to learn to identify these four elements when you're hearing about some kind of sudden eruption of fear about a drug and then new policies emerging. The first moral panic that we're going to talk about in the US is the temperance movement, and that is the longest running moral panic in the United States. You're going to learn a whole lot about that in the next section.